To receive one petition this evening from Kirsten de Keyser, who will also present a petition regarding the use of the weed killer glyphosate. Kirsten, you have 3 minutes to address the Council.
Thank you very much. My name is Kirsten de Keyser. This is Nick Mole from Pesticide Action Network, who can answer any questions about costs, practicalities, etc., that anybody might have. And we are here this evening on behalf of hundreds of Camden residents to present you this petition, which asks Camden Council to cease the use of the toxic herbicide glyphosate in our parks and on our paths. Modern technology and horticultural know-how can easily replace such outdated methods of weed control. We know that we need to eliminate toxic substances wherever we can, and this is one area where we can. Back in 2015, the World Health Organization warned that glyphosate was probably carcinogenic. Earlier this year, an American court ordered one of the manufacturers of glyphosate, Monsanto, to pay Dwayne Johnson, a 46-year-old former groundskeeper, terminally ill with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, $289 million in damages for failing to warn him of the health hazards from exposure to glyphosate. During the court case, testimony from toxicology expert, former government scientist and expert witness, Dr. Charles William Jameson, PhD, stated that to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, it's clear that glyphosate and glyphosate-based herbicides likely cause cancer in humans, particularly non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A few months before that landmark American court case, I had lost a dear elderly friend here in Camden to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A keen gardener, he too had been a local authority groundsman for most of his working life. The DMB Union has called for a ban of glyphosate to protect its members and the public. Yet Camden Council gardeners are daily spraying gallons of glyphosate around our borough, with who knows what effects on themselves and Camden residents, their children and their pets. Meanwhile, their colleagues in Hammersmith and Fulham are doing the exact same job, using a water-based hot foam treatment, while other authorities, including Edinburgh, Bristol and Brighton and Hove, are also using non-chemical weed control methods, maintaining a vibrant ecosystem populated by birds, bees and butterflies in the process. In collaboration with Pan-UK's Pesticide Free Towns initiative, a whole host of other local authorities throughout the UK are phasing out glyphosate, including Lewes, South Shropshire, Glastonbury Town Council and Cornwall County Council. We are now asking you, Camden Council, to secure for your staff and your residents a clean and safe green environment that we can enjoy without putting our health and that of our families at risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to ask a question of the petitioner, please? Councillor Madani.
Hi, thanks, Kirsten, for that and raising awareness of this clearly issue that you spoke very passionately about. Pardon my ignorance, I'm not really an expert on weed killer in any shape or form. We do have some beautiful squares and gardens in Bloomsbury. Can you tell me a bit more about what this glyphosate weed killer is like in comparison to what a normal garden would use, or how does it differ from what people use in their own homes generally, I suppose more in the north of the borough?
May I pass that on to the expert?
Please
because
do.
You'll get a much clearer and succinct answer from him, I'm sure.
It's pretty much the same thing as people use in their homes and gardens. It's probably slightly more concentrated, the stuff that's used professionally, than you use in your garden, but it is the same chemistry. And it poses the same risks, potentially, to whoever's using it.
Thank you. The next question, Councillor Cooper, please.
Great, thank you very much. Can I also thank Mr. Keyser for bringing this petition here. 900 residents, I think, have signed it, which shows a great outpouring of support for it. I also want to thank her for mentioning, I think, in the Ham and High a few weeks ago when you publicised it, that it was a policy that we, Camden Conservatives, support. So I'm glad to see that there is cross-party and cross-community consensus on that. But there's a specific question I want to ask off the back of that court case in the United States where $269 million was the cost to the world's largest producer of glyphosate of continuing their practice without taking proper measures to contain the risks of it, which is whether you think that local councils might bear a financial legal risk from continuing to use it without being aware or making other people aware of the harms. And second, I've just Googled alternatives to glyphosate. The first link is 11 alternatives, the next one is 13 alternatives. Do you have a preferred alternative out of all the examples that you've given that we can follow in Camden?
Well, not being an expert, I can only repeat what seems to be the preferred method in all the hundreds of councils across the globe who actually are already using other means. And the preferred method seems to be a sort of hot foam and oil method, which is sprayed onto to the weeds. But again, perhaps Nick can talk about the cost implication and so on.
Regarding council liability, I think it's a very important point. There are another 8,000 cases pending in the US alone. There are cases in the EU and there will be cases in the UK. And it does ask the question of, given the knowledge and everything that we know about it, would a council be held responsible if one of its employees were to fall ill as a result of glyphosate, and could it afford whatever outcome that was? $289 million is an awful lot to pay. So it's something I think council should be thinking about. As to alternatives, there are an awful lot available, but it's really up to the council to do some pilot testing to see what works best for them. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. There is no silver bullet as a replacement. It really is site and specific, and it needs a bit of testing, it needs a bit of work, but there are effective alternatives available, which the hundreds and hundreds of towns and cities across the world who don't use pesticides have proven very clearly.
Thank you. I'm aware we've got 3 more questions, but I'm only taking one. If you can see the screen, we're now into negative time. So, Councillor Beattie, you were the next person in line to raise a question.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And thank you to the petitioners for raising this. I think the first thing I would say is I'm very sorry for your loss, and I think you're very brave for coming here tonight. I would also say that I think I should say to you on behalf of Camden, and certainly from the Labour group, we treat the environment very seriously. And so hearing this is I think we all share your concerns. But I think I would also say it's good that the trade unions and one of our major trade unions, the GMB, are involved. I don't know what other councils do, and I'm sure it's a mix up and down the country, but I just wanted to get a sense from you what the alternatives might be and what the cost of, because, in these times of austerity, we are also very concerned about cost. What do you think the cost might be in changing to a different model? Thank you.
There's no simple answer to that. It depends very much on your situation. And you would have to have an audit, have a look at what is required, actually. And we as an organisation and the experience that we have would be more than happy to sit down and discuss that in more detail, because it's impossible to actually put a figure on it at the moment. However, experience has shown, particularly in Europe, that perhaps in the short term there might be an increase in cost. But going forward, if you start looking 2-3 years down the line, then we reach parity and perhaps start making savings as well. So this is a long-term project. If you want to go pesticide-free and if you want to deliver that for your citizens, then you have to be in it for the long term and make a commitment to do that. And there will be difficulties on the way, there's no denying that. But it is achievable and it can be brought in at the similar cost or reduced cost, which is what we've seen. And we're always keen to find novel ways of funding, whether it's sharing between councils, this sort of thing. So I as an organisation, I'd happily put the offer out there now. I will sit down with any one of you and we can work out how perhaps we can take this forward. Thank
you. If you'd like to just take your seats, the speakers, please. I'd now like to invite the Cabinet Member for Improving Camden's Environment, Councillor Harrison, to respond to the petitioner's statement. You will have 3 minutes to respond, Councillor Harrison.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try and fit it in 3 minutes. Thank you very much for bringing the petition. As ever, it's great to see Democracy in Action here in Camden. This is a very live issue. As you've noted, there are a number of events taking place around the world, and I've been following them very closely and noting the statement taken by the GMB, for example. This is something we're keeping very much under review. It may not be popular among some people to listen to experts, but we really do want to root our policy making in hard evidence. Having said that, let me just assure you and some of the others that that cost is not something that should be a barrier in this, as we try to understand what the situation is. Within Camden, the way glyphosate is used is very targeted, as any use of any chemical should be on our streets and in our parks. Let me be very clear that we only use it on hard standing and on paths. It's not on flower beds, it's not on lawns, it's not being sprayed around in some sort of indiscriminate way. It's very targeted on where weeds are likely to be. We're actually trialling some new methods at the moment using a machine which uses infrared technology to make it even more targeted, and I can also assure members that the operatives who use it are very highly trained, have the correct protective equipment, and actually have to pass a series of tests and qualifications in order to be able to use it. It's worth noting as well that WHO decision or categorisation certainly sounds alarming. They categorise it as probably carcinogenic. That's one of the reasons we are looking at it closely. Also within that probably carcinogenic category is working night shifts. Actually, alcohol is classed as carcinogenic, so it's a sort of more serious rating in the WHO schema. That's just a bit of context. And we are also looking at how the jury's decision in the Monsanto trial progresses up the US justice system. There hasn't been any change in guidance within the UK. DEFRA's guidance remains the same. We've also been speaking to our North London neighbouring boroughs, and they are doing very much the same as us, keep it under review and using it in a very targeted way. It's also worth noting that we do have an obligation to treat and remove invasive species like Japanese knotweed as quickly as we can, and we think probably other councils who have said they have stopped using glyphosate are probably still using that, because it's really very difficult to get rid of plants such as that. As somebody noted, this is used in gardens, it's used by farmers not just across the country but right around the world. I think it's the most well-used or widely used pesticide globally. The science is still evolving. There are traces that have been found within humans of glyphosate as it passes through down the food chain. So it's not something that may not be a concern in the future. But if anything, we think probably we're going to be better prepared than some of the homeowners, garden owners, and farmers, because we are trialling a number of methods at the moment, including hot foam as well, and we will continue to do that. So if things change, if guidance changes, we think we'll be pretty well prepared.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you, Kirsten, and your colleague for coming in and presenting the petition. Would you please hand it to our clerk, please, on my right? Thank you.